Hoi hoi! It's louisity again, and for this reading vlog, I'm going to read Tiger Honor by Yoon Ha Lee. Hurrah! So, this is some sort of a companion / sequel novel to Dragon Pearl written by Yoon Ha Lee, and I have a reading vlog of my reading experience which I'll be putting in the description box down below. I liked it, and I'm excited that I'm going to be moving on quickly to the second book, to this companion / sequel novel. Well, the fate jar decided, so I'm going to read it. And we are following a non-binary character, which I don't usually read, which is, a good thing to explore. I think this is, if not that I haven't read a non-binary MC, probably this would be the first time. So yes, I'm looking forward. Again, another Korean mythology inspired space opera, middle grade preteen sci-fi fantasy. Here we go, and I'm definitely excited about what's going to be in store for this. So I'll get my seatbelts, and I'm going to be reading. I'm going to be in for a ride, outer space. So I'll catch you folks later. Hoorah!
Hey, no, no, no.
So here's a reading update of Tiger Honor by Yoon Ha Lee. Now, I've read more than 100 pages of this book, and so far we got to hear about the prologue where Y7 ended up being in the prison, and also we got to know more about Seven's family, which is really cool for me because I felt it talks about family dynamics, about their love for one another, including their extended family outside of their nuclear family, which is kind of a common thing, especially for East Asians and Southeast Asians. And also I felt there was something about this book that gave military vibes, where you talk about giving honor, and how that scene where I really felt how they were devastated about hearing, Captain Juan being caught for treason or for being a traitor, and how they felt really bad about it, and that, they wouldn't believe it, and how they believe that Juan is, a decent person. I feel we're going to be exploring the other side, or the other side of the clan, and I feel there's some sort of vibes we're in, and this is just based on how I'm reading the story so far, where you get to know about how conflicts between different groups of creatures, kind of if you're going to make a parallelism to what is out there in the world, how do you say this, sort of how you can understand how people from different groups behave a certain way, and kind of hearing their sides and all that stuff. I feel this novel is going to be about that, getting to hear about not only Captain Juan, but commonly the values of the Tiger clan, which we'll find out, and then we get to see him being entered as a cadet. And honestly, there was just so many things that like happened unexpectedly because of the circumstances that are going to be surrounding this book. and how, for 7, their experience is basically, not the typical one, not the stereotypical one, not like the typical orientation that he was like, that they were expecting to be a part of. Yeah, by the way, 7 is non-binary, so 7's pronouns are they, okay? And then also, yeah, it's really cool that you get to see like some kiddie things about here, whenever they were talking about trying to access like the camera and stuff. I felt like they were like kind of like kids getting curious about like what are going to be doing and all that stuff, and what else can I say about it? In terms of like the sort of space opera vibes, I felt it more in the Dragon Pearl part. So far, this felt like as if, yes, there are like some space vibes, but I felt like it was more of like the military vibes that's being shown here, with how the story runs. And then, yeah, and then there's also an explosion that happened, and how they knew that it was Captain Juan who was involved, and now they're connecting a 7. And and then also during the first 100 pages we get to know like what happened, why 7 ended up in prison. So I'm just really curious about, like, there was this like part in this synopsis where Min is like the enemy, and it's kind of like, because I read Dragon Pearl and I kind of like still recall a little bit about what happened in that book, I'm definitely curious about like how they would be able to hear each other's sides. So yeah, and it's kind of like a cool thing about how they vividly, included characters that probably for other people are not usual. You get to see the word uncle as an AUNCLE, which is like, a term that you use for your parent's sibling who identifies as non-binary. So I think this is like one of the first books, let alone first like middle grade preteen book that involved non-binary characters that I read. So yes, I'm definitely looking for about what the adventure is going to be. And I love the fact that it already tackles about morals and what people like stand on, and what else, like, yeah, then kids kind of like being kids somewhat here, so yeah. And I also, another thing that I liked, another thing that caught my attention was like that part wherein like 7 is saying that them being, related to somebody who's being accused, it's like it's not their fault that, they were related to somebody who is, accused, or let alone who is guilty, and of course when you've read the Dragon Pearl, you kind of like would kind of know which side you're going to be on, or what you think of Juan, if that makes any sense. But like 7's, it's not their fault that 7's related to Captain Juan, and it made me contemplate about certain things about like, do people like pay for the sins of their ancestors? And sometimes there's this sort of presumption about, they could be either still participating in it, or say, complicit about it, or they're not exactly doing anything to repair or to be better, or to like bring a better upholding to it. So yeah, and we'll find out what's going to be happening next, and definitely I'm looking forward to. And even if it's thin, maybe it's because it's a sci-fi, or more of like there's like military elements. It is quite quick paced, yet I still felt like, personally for me, I had to take time. I had to like reread some of the parts. Maybe it's because for me to be able to immerse more, and I personally don't mind it in terms of reading experience. So yeah, so I'm really excited to read the next hundreds of pages for this. I mean, hundreds, I'm guessing like the other one's like half 100 maybe, but yeah, I'm definitely excited to read the succeeding pages. So I'll catch folks later. Whoa. So here's another reading update. Now, I decided to do it like outdoors, just to do something a little bit more different outside of my house. Yeah, we're all about that. And I'm glad that I already read nearly 200 pages of Tiger Honor by Yoon Ha Lee. Now we get to hear about Min being a gumiho or a spirit fox, and I'm glad that they brought it up. And also another thing that we get to find out in the next pages is that Seven about their uncle, and Seven gets to find out the not so beautiful side or the not so good side of their uncle and how they were like processing it. It's kind of like in life we're in, there's someone that you know of and someone that you truly admire and that someone that you truly love, and you don't really get to hear about like their other side or other things that you would never have thought that they've done. And it's kind of like sometimes in family, it's kind of like sometimes we know some of the people, like our family members or people that we love, like certain traits, and then when you get to hear about that they betrayed or they scammed or whatsoever, any like evil act, at first you won't believe it, but if you're actually there, it's like, it is like a lot different, because you get to witness firsthand about their actions. And I wonder what Seven is feeling. Actually, I kind of know based on the story, that they like really want to patch things up, and know that Uncle Juan isn't really like a great person. Kind of like, it kind of like talks about power as well. It's going to make you contemplate. If you want to be like in a position of power, maybe you need to pull some strings, kind of like when Uncle Juan was mentioning points about Min, as we know in the Dragon Pearl, if you've read it already, like Min uses charm, and even here in this book, Min is still using charm, so it's kind of like it makes you think about, and it kind of link it to Arusha again, about the whole whose side are you going to be with, and how like the other side is not really that great. It makes you contemplate about, and then I was like thinking when I was reading this book, like if Seven tells their family about like what they discovered about Uncle Juan, would the matriarch also like sort of disagree, or what would the matriarch do, or what would Seven's family do? How would they feel? They would probably think that Seven's brainwashed, but kind of like going back to what I was saying, like maybe some people aren't really that great, or they have their bad sides that sometimes it might be too much to deal with, or something that doesn't align with you, kind of like that. I hope I'm making myself clear here. Like I'm trying to think of like, it's like sometimes you meet somebody and you get their like good traits, you love them, you enjoy being with them, and then they do something, they make decisions that are like out of hand or like out of control, and you get to ask yourself, like, are they really that great? Are they really the people that you've known all along? Something to really contemplate about. I think that's, and now like Seven is really doing a lot, to like take control, like have their little army with Yuna and a G, and of course the merc who decided to switch sides, Rokuro. Sorry, I'm kind of bad with names. I'll probably flash it up if, once I read it. So, yeah. And, so far, the Space Vibes, I felt it more in the Dragon Pearl book rather than here in Tiger Honor. But yeah, I love, though, the wisdom that this book brings. So, I'll catch you folks later.
Yeah, no, no, love. Yeah, no, no, love. Yeah, no, no, love. Yeah, yeah, no.
So it is now time for another TBR Fate Jar pick. Hurrah! So let's leave it to this Fate Jar to determine which book I'll be reading next. I'm shaking it and I'm looking at the camera. Let's see, what will it be? I'm still looking at the camera. I'm gonna go with this one. What could this be? Oh, finally! Yay! Finally, I've been waiting for so long to read this one. I'm going to be reading Front Desk by Kellyanne. Can you see it? Can you see it? Can you see it? There you go. So I finally finished reading Tiger Honor by Yoon Ha Lee. Now, the color of the cover matches the color of my shirt. That's gotta be cool. And I'd have to say that this was written really well, and it deals a lot with like family dynamics, relationships with families, loyalty and honor. It's kind of like it does tackle that. You know, it's gonna make you contemplate about it, especially those scenes about like that ending. Oh my goodness. It's like, how loyal and how much will you honor your family? Like if their values already like astray, whatever faith or creed that you have, and like perhaps like your basis of what morally good is, or of course basically your morals, then how long will you be honoring your family? And I like the fact about, there was a scene that I was reading towards like the end of the book where it has been different for Seven, like seeing the other side. Like if Seven was not like invited as, you know, a cadet or who passed, you know, being a part of Space Forces, then Seven would probably, you know, I'm afraid to say like blindly support Juan. And no matter like what Juan's motivations are, you know, basically Juan did not abide with the rules, as well as not only did not abide by the rules, but also did things that are just like, you know, morally bad along the way. You know, even though if there is a tinge of goodness with him, you know, Juan needs to like face what he's got to face. So I like that, and it kind of explores about like decision making. Basically, is it all the time that we make like the best decisions in order for us to do like the best outcome? Are we gonna be too strict about the end does not justify the means and all that stuff? It's gonna make you contemplate on those things. And power, basically, you know, with the matriarch, you know, the things that the matriarch meddled on. It makes me curious about if this will be tackled in the next book. You know, basically the matriarch is kind of like the person who is in a position of power, and you know, it kind of makes me want to know more about like Seven's family, the Juhuang clan. Like, were they really greedy for power? Because I'm getting like that impression about them towards like the end of the book, and it makes me think about like power dynamics. And it's interesting how all these things are like taken into like a people of color perspective, like the people of color setup, I should say. And how there are like certain issues or certain themes that were tackled, and kind of like seeing how it is applied to like, you know, other people out there. So I'm definitely excited for Fox there. And one thing that I'm kind of like 50-50 on is in terms of like how the atmosphere was like written, though, like in terms of say how you would feel like it's a space opera. I felt like it was shown more in the Dragon Pearl. Here it isn't that much, although there were like scenes there that did feel that vibe. And I'm also thinking of the reason why I said I'm 50-50 about it is because I know like in the first book, like the scenes, the settings were like established, and maybe it is presumed that when you're going to be reading this book, then perhaps maybe you would already feel those vibes. But for some reason, for myself, In terms of like the world building, I felt like there was something that like shrank for me in terms of my reading experience, but maybe it's because I'm already expected to read it, regardless whether I see this as a sequel or if I see this as a companion novel. Which, by the way, if it is the latter, I think that that's gonna be not the best option. It's like, for me personally, when I read this book, I see this more as a sequel. I know I've read some stuff about this as being like a companion to like Dragon Pearl, and if you can like read this right away. I think there were like some stuff on the internet that like said that, but I think that you would be able to understand some of the things that happen if you've read the Dragon Pearl. And if you're going to be reading this right away, you might not feel like the space vibes, depending on like your reading experiences when it comes to space operas or like sci-fi novels that are based on space operas. I do understand that this is written for like, or aimed at like like really young kids, or yeah, I'd say really young, like 9 to 13 is like quite young, middle grade / preteen, that bracket. Although of course, as young adults and adults can enjoy it as well. So, but yeah, it's very enjoyable. I was hoping a little bit more like spacey vibes of it a bit more, but like overall, I love like the messages that are being conveyed, the themes or the pointers that like would make you contemplate about certain things and make you think about things in life, such as power, family, honor, loyalty, decision making. Like, is it always black and white and all that stuff? This is like the epitome of it, and I had a good reading experience, and it was pretty good. And based on the overall findings that I've experienced. And before I get into that, I was about to say the rating. Even if this is like relatively thinner compared to like the Dragon Pearl and maybe the other books that I read, I do think that because perhaps maybe this is a sci-fi novel wherein you would take a little bit more time. So for me in my reading pace, it wasn't like as if like a rocket is just like zooming, So yeah. Anyway, all things considered, I'm going to be giving this book 4.25 out of 5 stars. Hopefully this video made you folks interested in reading the Thousand Worlds series, and if you've made it this far, leave a silver medal emoji. And I hope you folks liked this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Also, click that subscribe button and hit that little bell icon somewhere down there to keep yourselves posted about my videos. And also put down links and handles of my social media accounts, so feel free to check me out and follow me there as well. As always, thank you so much for watching. Always be thankful and unleash the reader in you. Bye, y'all.